Has the church left the building? For many of us, it already had. Church had already left the building. The church has been forced to leave the building, unable to gather for its services. I've seen some happy claims on social media celebrating that, yay, church has left the building. I've also seen some more biting and cutting comments that at last the church has been forced to leave the building in a kind of, well, let's see how you get on now then attitude. Then there are some comments of the, perhaps I'll consider rejoining these churches now they've been forced to leave their services kind of thing. My church, like many others, has been forced to stop meeting in person. That's been painful and something we're grieving. Also immensely painful is the curtailing of community connections we have and the care that we've been giving to others. When we get back to and have our first Sunday service in person, I think we're going to need at least an hour beforehand just to get all the hugs and tears out of the way as we reconnect. It's certainly been a steep learning curve to reconfigure Sunday services, small groups, home groups and other ministries into online live streaming spaces. But as we've moved our regular points of physical contact into the virtual, we found something that we already knew. Our church was already far more than a Sunday service or a building. We've not become a new church, but rather in moving more of us into the virtual, we've connected to what was already there. And the truth is, many of the churches I know are experiencing the same. Their collective life, mission and purpose was already far more than a meeting. And like a family that discovers their life in common is more than the house they pay for and live in. In other words, you can't take your church online unless there was already a church outside of your meetings in the first place. For many of us, isolation and quarantine has actually led to more talking and more connection, not less. The church was already more than a Sunday service. I've been leading the church I planted with my wife for almost 23 years. We have seen many Christians, once part of our community, drift into disconnection and isolation over time. Kids, hobbies and distractions, and for some the sufferings of life, claim more and more of their time until we never saw them again. Then some have been more vociferous in their disconnection from church. Sundays for some became the only thing they were connected to less and less until they made the decision to abandon church entirely, as if that was something radical to do as a Christian. They made the decision to leave the church for good, justified by the claim, often, words to these effect of, church is more than a Sunday service. That claim always seemed ironic to me, for it was they who'd reduced it to just a Sunday service. Yet anecdotally, and in terms of any surveys of church and Christians that I've managed to find, such decisions have not led to anything other than Christians becoming less Christian. By the way, most of us in the church know full well that church is more than a Sunday service and engage more in it outside of Sundays. And I'm going to make a caveat here. I am not talking about those genuinely abused or hurt by the church. Some of my dearest friends have been treated appallingly by churches. In fact, some of my pastor friends have been used and abused by churches that they have served. I'm rather talking about those who've become pathologically unable to gather with others around their faith. Those for whom it matters not that they do nothing day to day for the mission of the kingdom, just as long as they're not in a church with a Sunday service or a building. Too much of modern church worship, to be honest with you, has become over the years a kind of sacralized narcissism, something to make us feel better and something to use to get something else from life, or to turn to in a crisis from time to time. Now, the logical conclusion to that mode of church life is to jettison it entirely for a download on demand for what I need version, away from engagement with others. Lastly, an angiogram. What are the conditions of your heart and that of your church? This season we're in, this crisis and forced isolation are like an angiogram for everyone, those in a church and those who think they can live outside it. In an angiogram, a dye is injected into the blood vessels of the heart, so that an X-ray can be taken to show the health of the heart. The forced isolation in this metaphor that I'm using is an injection of dye into the heart of our lives. The health of our hearts is going to be revealed, i.e. what's alive, what's blocked and in danger of dying, and what is already dead. What is in the heart of every church will also be revealed. Now, some other things are going to be diagnosed and revealed in this process. What is in the heart of those within the church will be laid bare. How engaged or connected to the heart of the body of Christ those Christians are, and the condition of their own hearts will be shown. Even those in isolation and separation from the church will have the health of their connection to the body of Christ revealed. For some, it's going to allow a realization of the life-threatening blockages that need attending to. For some, it will lead to a cardiac arrest, sadly. Some will try a blood transfusion from the body for a while until they can return to the isolation they were in. But some in separation from the body are going to realize they need to be transplanted back into the church. And some already established in the body of Christ are going to find themselves more alive than they have ever been before. And as I finished writing this, I heard my wife laughing, a sign that she was online with church colleagues and team members from the church. And they were talking through our live stream for this coming Sunday. In between the laughter generated by their banter, I heard updates about youth and kids and community, the textures of the life of our church before the coronavirus. I could hear those. And the life of our church that will continue during it and after it. So wherever you are in the world, I pray that this Sunday you will be blessed as you connect to your existing church, perhaps very differently. And I pray that those of you disconnected and isolated before the coronavirus came, isolated from the body of Christ already, I pray that you'll find your way back to life and connection that was always there for you. If one thing is different now, it's that there are so many more online doorways into the church than ever before.